There are two characters on screen right now. I'd like you to note the shared aspects of their character design. Black dress, slender figure, red lips, partially exposed breasts, and maybe a seductive stance. So, knowing that, could you tell me which character is the respected mercenary commander, and which is the seductress? You have 10 seconds to find an answer. Got your answer? Now, obviously this is Ursula and Sonia from Fire Emblem Blazing Sword, and if you've played Blazing Sword, your answer was probably a no-brainer. But I'm willing to bet there's a portion of you in my audience who said that the woman on the left was the seductress, and that is where you'd be incorrect. These two characters have a very standout and unique design when they are compared to the rest of the game's cast of villains. And while these characters each fill very different roles within the story, their designs can both be described using the same key words and phrases. So why is this the case? Well, that's what we're here to discuss today, as we explore why Fire Emblem, mostly, gets fan service right. Before we begin, I feel it's necessary to define what exactly I mean by fan service. Fan service is actually a very broad term that can mean anything from Easter eggs, fan favorite characters returning from the dead, items, catchphrases, or in some cases, using sex or sexual themes to entice the audience. The latter, sadly, has become the assumed meaning of the term fan service, especially when referring to games or anime. But what differentiates fan service from sexual themes? Well, if we go back to our definition, I'll draw attention to that last part, enticing the audience. When a TV show, film, or video game includes sexual themes, it does not automatically make those themes fan service. The Satoshi Kon film Perfect Blue is a great example of this, wherein such sexual themes are used as a means to tell a story and make a point, rather than sticking a character with large breasts in the middle of the frame just because they can. Fanservice has been in both Japanese and Western media long before the cliches that categorized it as such were even conceived. One of my favorite examples of a so-called fanservice character being Faye Valentine from Cowboy Bebop. But what sets Faye apart from other characters is not only that is her design easy on the eyes, she has a direct motivation as a character to both act and look the way she does. So, what does this have anything to do with Fire Emblem? Well, backtracking a little, in Fire Emblem Blazing Sword, Sonia is characterized much in the same way that Faye Valentine is, one that justifies her alluring design. So as not to spoil much, Sonia is a henchman of the main villain, and marries the leader of a mercenary company to leverage the villain's influence within the Guild of Mercenaries. While her lore and screen time is limited, we understand fully why Sonia does the things she does and how it is reflected in her character design. This is why Sonia's design works from a narrative standpoint and why Ursula's doesn't. Any character in any given story has three core parts that make them part of the narrative, those being function within the story, which handles their character development and their general role, their personality, which handles their traits and what roles they fill in terms of dynamic with the other characters, and finally, either the least or the most important part of them, depending on who you ask, the character design. And each of these aspects should feed into each other. Ideally, every character should be able to create a perfectly triangular relationship among these three aspects, and when one is out of whack with the other two, your character is likely not as good as you think. Ursula is a type of character like this. Her design creates a huge disconnect between her function and her personality. While sure, you could argue that her body language, haircut, and use of deep blues and purples demand a more regal and imposing presence than a sexy one, the design choices like the deep v-neck, bright red lips, exposed hips, and thigh-high stockings betray a lot of what makes the design strong otherwise. Her redesign in Fire Emblem Heroes, doesn't exactly do her any favors either. Perhaps I'm reading a bit too deeply into it, but I've found that the more you look, the more you realize that the most recent entries into the Fire Emblem series have a far better grasp on how to handle both their character design and the fan service aspects of them. You see, fan service of this variety, that being enticing the audience through sexual themes, didn't really crop up until the GBA games. FE1 and Gaiden were too limited in terms of artwork and hardware for someone like me to really judge them by modern standards. And while you can make the case for Lind or Ishtar having appealing designs, they both fit within the conventions of their casts, and in Lind's case has a design that's a dime a dozen for female mages in the early Fire Emblem titles. Many will often cite the first fan service characters in Fire Emblem to be Sonia and Lyn from Blazing Sword, as they were each the direct ancestor of the two most common tropes in newer Fire Emblem games when it comes to fan service characters, being the sexy dark mage and the avatar sexual. This isn't something I personally agree with. While Sonia is very much the progenitor of the sexy dark mage, Lyn being the avatar sexual is something that has always confused me. Let's go back to our character triangle. Lyn's function as the intermediary between the player and the game is one that she holds dearly for the first 10 chapters. She introduces us to the world of Alib before taking her place as the girl spot in the classic power trio. As a result, her personality is friendly, trusting, welcoming, and level-headed, and her design reflects this. She's simple-looking, superficially pretty, well not overtly so, and her confident stance reflects her level-headedness. The use of bright blues is soft and inviting, reflecting her friendliness, and in all respects, Lyn's design perfectly respects her personality and role in the story. But hold on, none of that sounded like her being an avatar sexual. So what gives? Well, I think a big reason many consider Lyn a fan service character today is due to players imparting that identity onto Lyn retroactively. Lyn's relationship with Mark is a very believable and tightly written close friendship, with the ending of Lyn's campaign being one of the most beautifully bittersweet moments in all of Fire Emblem. As a result, many new players remember Lyn fondly as a character and impart a romantic interest in the avatar as a result of the writing's vagueness and open-endedness. Any sexuality Lyn has is imparted on her by the player's own feelings, and are a result of what is a somewhat manipulative, but very well done writing. Comparing Lyn then to an actually avatar sexual character, we'll use Camilla as our example. Camilla's function in the story is meant to be a doting, obsessive, and somewhat motherly figure to Corrin. She's petty, obsessive, worrisome, and sultry. Her design has a heavy use of blacks and purples, accentuating the darker aspects of her personality. Her curvy, rounded physique, however, offsets this. With Camilla's well-endowed upper body, she gives off an aura of motherliness, large breasts being symbolic of maternity and fertility in many cultures. Her rounded cheeks, full lips, and surprisingly neutral stance reflect this as well. Camilla's design is sufficiently genius. Compared to Lyn, Camilla can be read very easily from her design, a trait she shares with some of the best and most iconic character designs from the past few decades. Lyn has romantics placed upon her by new players, whereas Camilla's design is carefully calculated, meant to entice players. By definition, the sexual type of fan service. So is one objectively better than the other? I honestly think so. When compared to Ursula, whose design screams fan service but betrays her character, and Lyn, who has been retroactively given the title, the deliberateness of Camilla's design and personality has them both beat in my eyes, and I think is an interesting step and discussion point. Now, please, before writing me an angry comment or spamming this video with dislikes because I dared to praise Camilla, please consider that from the get-go, Camilla was engineered for the purpose of sex appeal, and both her popularity and infamy is a direct result of this conscious design choice. Her character is an effective reflection of a niche function, and Camilla executes her function perfectly. Camilla's design and characterization does sex appeal to perfection, but fails in most other areas, that being characterization and development. But honestly, those areas were never something Camilla from a functional standpoint was designed to do. Essentially, she's a vase with flowers in it, designed to look pretty and add color, but not good for much else. But it doesn't need to be. While Camilla is nowhere near as nuanced as Lynn or as intriguing as Ursula, she serves a function and serves this function perfectly. This can be said for a lot of characters considered fan service who are presented in the newer titles. Tharja and Charlotte come to mind for me. But that's not to say that every Kozaki design with fan service in mind is a hit. Kagero is one such design. Like Ursula, she has a bit of disconnect between her design and personality. See, in the triangle I mentioned, every aspect of a character should justify the next. And Kagero's large bust and generally enticing design betrays her reserved, calm, and thought-driven personality. Her design is justified by her origins, being based off the kunoichi of feudal Japan, who often used their bodies as weapons. But this detail is ignored in the game, and leaves out crucial pieces of her backstory, character, and inspiration, leaving her design feeling conflicting and out of place. External details cannot be used to justify this kind of thing, as they are extraneous to the information that the story otherwise presents. So, with Kagero in mind, we have a very clear, concise, and definite list of what makes a fanservice character work, why the newer Fire Emblem games like Fates and Awakening understand this to a T, and why justifying their evocative designs is important. So, who of characters in the recent games does this the best? Well, if I had made this video before the release of Fire Emblem Echoes, my answer would have been Charlotte. But thanks to Shadows of Valentia, we have Sonia. Similar to her Blazing Sword namesake, Sonia nails the sexy mage angle pretty hard. The dark reds induce confidence and arrogance, her stance suggests control, while her facial expression exudes a bit of playful sarcasm. As with Camilla, the use of blacks and purples keys us into the more negative and darker aspects of her personality. And what I prefer about Sonia over Camilla and Charlotte is that her design strikes a balance between realism and sex appeal. Camilla's open thighs and lack of pants, and Charlotte's, are in my opinion a bit too revealing and can tonally affect the game. And honestly, I think the same effect of their character designs could have been achieved through a couple alterations. But Sonia's design by comparison leaves just enough to the imagination while also accentuating her figure and remaining tonally consistent with the rest of Echoes. Adding this is Sonia's personality, perfectly justifying her design and function, making her one of Echo's most believable and realistic characters. My hat's off to Terra Sands for brilliantly portraying this conflicted soul who hides her problems behind her physique. To wrap up, I'd like to take a quick delve into heroes. Every character I've mentioned in this video appears in Heroes, some more accurate to their original appearances than others. While Sonia, Tharja, Charlotte, and Camilla translated perfectly into Heroes, Ursula, Kagero, and Lynn ran into a few issues. Ursula and Kagero both suffer from the same problem. Likewise, how they both suffer from the same problem in terms of character design disconnecting with their personality. They both got a boost in bust size and more focus on their fanservice-y elements. And in Ursula's case, she's actually a better representation of FE7 Sonia than FE7 Ursula, which is actually pretty hilarious. Lynn, however, is a strange one, and is a weird translation into Heroes, as, like Ursula and Kagero, she received a bust size increase, but I think this was likely intentional. Heroes is about quickly pitching characters to people, and many of the characters are hyperbolic representations of their in-game counterparts. Camus is a great example of this. And Lynn's increase in sex appeal is an interesting discussion point, as I feel it was a quick solution to a problem Lynn would naturally have when translating into Heroes. As stated previously, any appeal Lynn had was created by the player. Heroes doesn't have enough writing or story to convey the nature of Lynn's complex relationship with Mark, and they needed to cut corners. Therefore, giving her a bust size increase was a possible answer. And in doing this, Heroes creates that same attraction to Lyn through visuals. Lyn was never a fan service character, but she's starting to become one. Lyn has become a different kind of fan service character, however. Is it good? Is it bad? I can't really say, but I'll leave you with this. Fan service is just that. Service for the fans. Every Easter egg, returning fan favorite character, or weird camera angle to expose a character's breasts is meant to please you, the fans, because the developers and creators of these games do in fact care. Lyn's Heroes portrayal is worth a lot more than just a bust size increase. She is synonymous with Western Fire Emblem, as many who bought Blazing Sword, many of those 1 million players who first stepped into Fire Emblem, likely hold a special place in their heart for Lyn. And that is what makes her special. Her adapting to the times is merely the union of old and new. She is still the same Lyn. But when we live in an age where female characters are now a big part of Fire Emblem's modern appeal, characters like Sonya, Camilla, and Tharja are the groundwork that needed to be laid for many years of fan service done right to come. Oh, hey, you made it to the end of the video. Well, I hope you enjoyed, because I'm really passionate about this topic, and I think the fact that a lot of characters like Camilla and Tharja get a lot of unwarranted hate really bothers me, especially when they do what they set out to do as characters. But just keep in mind that even in modern Fire Emblem, the amount of fan service is really only localized to 1 or 2 characters, one of them often being a villain. So for every Camilla or Tharja out there, there's at least 2 or 3 Oboros or Cordelias out there who balance them out. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, why not throw me a like, share it with a friend, and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more content like this in the future. My name is ZerkMonsterHunter 4, and no matter what your taste in 2D women is, as always, happy hunting.